A five-judge constitution bench of the Supreme Court of India pronounced its verdict on a batch of petitions challenging abrogation of Article 370 and the reorganization of the state into union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. India's Chief Justice said that Jammu and Kashmir does not hold any internal sovereignty after accession to India in October 1947. Chief Justice of India also said that Article 370 is a temporary provision and interim arrangement. He further said use of precedent power was not nullified and that Supreme Court can't sit over President's decision. Supreme Court holds that the power of the President to issue a notification that Article 370 ceases to exist subsists even after the dissolution of Jammu and Kashmir Constituent Assembly. The court upholds abrogation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir. It's constitutionally valid and has directed the Election Commission of India to conduct elections to the Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir by September of 2024. Supreme Court has asked Centre submission on the restoration of statehood of Jammu and Kashmir. The court also upholds the reorganization of Ladakh as union territory. The court has directed to set up Truth and Reconciliation Commission to help restore peace between the two communities. The Apex Court reserved the judgment earlier on September 5th after a 16-day argument session. The centre had said that abrogation of Article 370 was temporary and is aligned with the legal framework.
Act 2019, by which the state of Jammu and Kashmir was bifurcated into two union territories. The Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and the Union Territory of Ladakh is constitutionally valid, bearing in mind, 1, the first proviso to Article 3, which requires that a bill affecting the area, boundaries, or name of a state has to be referred to the legislature of the state for its views. And 2, the second proviso to Article 3, which requires the consent of the state legislature for increasing or diminishing the area of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, or altering the name of the boundary of the state before the introduction of the bill in Parliament.
Conclude that Article 370 was intended to be a temporary provision. As a corollary, there was a mechanism to bring the whole arrangement to an end. The effect of the power under Article 373, once exercised, would be that the article shall cease to be operative. In other words, the mechanism was meant to de-recognize the state's internal sovereignty. Thus, the exercise of power under Article 373 meant that for purposes of the Constitution of India, only the Constitution of India would apply to the Jammu and Kashmir and not any other constitution, that is the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir.
The Supreme Court of India on Monday upheld the abrogation of Article 370. On August 5th, 2019, Indian government had revoked Article 370, which grants special status to the North Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir. DD India Sakal Bhatt gets this exclusive ground report from Jama Masjid Market. The heart of downtown, erstwhile terror bastions, is now thriving with business and economic activities. Massive shift post-abrogation of Article 370.
For decades and decades, downtown area of Srinagar has always been symbolic of unrest, turbulence, turmoil, disturbances, arson, bandh, hartals, terror attacks, and everything that has to do with the disruption. But now, is it a transition that the downtown in Srinagar, which traditionally is called Sheher-e-Khas, is witnessing? What we are going to tell you is the story of the making of New Kashmir. I'm right now standing in the middle of the Jama Masjid market, and this is how a weekday here looks like. On my left is a very famous Jama Masjid market, which continues to witness very busy business activity. And on my right is a very famous Jama Masjid mosque situated in Nauhata in the downtown middle of the old city in Srinagar. Jama Masjid में आपकी दुकान कैसी चल रही है आजकल?
गांव से आता है वो शॉपिंग करने आता है वो थोड़ा काम चलता है बंद क्या बंद ये दुकान हालात बिल्कुल ठीक है कुछ नहीं होता है हाँ रेनोवेट किया गवर्नमेंट ने वो भी अच्छा है और अगर करेगा मरम्मत वो अच्छा रहेगा हाँ टूरिस्ट भी आता है बहुत आता है अंग्रेज भी आता है
Aftab Ahmed Khan has this textile shop, and this shop has been here since last more than
43 years.
43 years means 4 decades. And this shop, or perhaps Aftab Saab, has been privy to the decades of unrest and much more. But what has been the shift? What has been the change? आफ्ताब साहब ये बताइए आपका काम कैसा चल रहा है?
बिजनेस तो पहले से चल रहा है, अच्छा चल रहा है हमारा, इस मार्केट में चल रहा है, बिल्कुल अच्छा चल रहा है। यहाँ कम से कम है 600 दुकानें हैं, 8000 लोग इधर काम करते हैं, हर एक दुकानदार के पास 4-4, 5-5 सेल्समैन हैं। अब आप उनका देखिए कि अयाल उनकी फैमिली ये बनता है 8000, इधर काउंटर काम बिल्कुल कैश, गाँव से बारामूला, कुपवारा, पुलवामा, सोपोर सब इधर आते हैं।
क्या टर्नओवर होगा इस मार्केट का अब?
जिनको होगा 1-2 करोड़ टर्नओवर, बिल्कुल कैश टर्नओवर।
So this is the story of the journey of the last 4 years or more post abrogation of Article 370. The making of the Naya Kashmir or New Kashmir, which is all about peace and not door pelting. It is all about development and not disruption. It is all about stability and not uncertainty or stagnation. It is all about transformation and not about turbulence. It's not about terror now, it's all about transition to education, to employment, to development and much more. The peace will prevail, paradise on earth, the beauty of this valley will prevail, and that is the will of the people and that is the intent of the people. Abrogation of Article 370 has brought in a new lease of life, a new lease of hope for the Kashmiris here. This is the story of the New Kashmir.
And India correspondent Vikas Sarthi joins us live with more updates on the story. Vikas, take us through the highlights of the Supreme Court historic order and how does it pave way for a new era for Jammu and Kashmir?
Right, Shubhendu. So, in August 2019, President issued two constitutional orders, and those orders were related to first revocation of Article 370 or abrogation of Article 370, and the other one was related to bifurcation of Jammu and Kashmir. So, the Supreme Court Constitution Bench, after hearing both parties of both sides for 16 days today, held that there was no illegality or unconstitutionality on part of the center as far as these orders are concerned, and Supreme Court has also held that, in fact, in this issue, the president has the final say. The court was of the view that even if the Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir would have differed from the union's stand, finally, it was the president's power that would have been exercised, and because of that reason, Supreme Court has upheld those presidential orders. As far as the issue of proclamation of president rule and the bifurcation of Jammu and Kashmir in 2 union territories are concerned, Supreme Court was of the view that these issues are not that much relevant for the petitioners. They have raised the core issue of abrogation of Article 370, and only on that point Supreme Court has delivered this verdict. There were 3 Supreme Court judgments on this particular issue. One was written by Chief Justice of India for himself and for Justice B.R. Gavai, and as far as the other judgments are concerned, this second judgment was written by Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul, who himself comes from Jammu and Kashmir, hails from Jammu and Kashmir, and Justice Sanjeev Khanna concurred with opinion of both the judgments, and he gave a brief judgment where he agreed with both judgments, judgment of Chief Justice of India as well as with the judgment of Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul. So it's a lengthy judgment, but as far as the crux is concerned, Supreme Court is of the opinion. The first issue is that Article 370 was a temporary provision. The claim of petitioner that it has acquired value or role of a permanent legislation was incorrect. Supreme Court has held that it was a temporary provision. Other than that, court has also said that Jammu and Kashmir didn't have sovereignty of its own. When the instrument of accession was signed, Jammu and Kashmir lost its sovereignty to India on that very particular day. And in fact, court also pointed out that it is not the first instance where president has issued certain orders. In fact, we have seen in the past 70 years, a number of such orders have been issued by the president. And Supreme Court has held that this exercise was in fact a kind of constitutional integration with the Constitution of India.
Okay, Vikas, and Prime Minister Modi calls the judgment a beacon of hope. He's particularly assured the most marginalized sections who've suffered due to Article 370 for a more prosperous future ahead.
Exactly, Shubhendu. For that reason, we have seen pictures from Jammu and Kashmir where people are welcoming Supreme Court's judgment, though the issue had been decided in 2019 itself, but some petitions were pending before the Supreme Court, and since the Constitution Bench has held that the orders or the relevant bills which were brought later were in consonance with the provisions of the Constitution, now this issue has been decided for once and all. Apart from it, if you look at the developments after 2019, the several welfare programs could not be implemented in Jammu and Kashmir because the bills or the acts decided by Parliament of India, approved by Parliament of India, were not implemented in Jammu and Kashmir. There was a provision that first Assembly will have to bring similar bills, and only after that these provisions could be implemented in Jammu and Kashmir. Now this dichotomy has been ended with the 29 decision of the Union of India, and if you go by the recent bills which have been brought in the Parliament, particularly related to providing reservation to scheduled tribe community, scheduled caste community, and Kashmiri migrants as well, these particular sections were deprived of their right. They didn't have any kind of representation in state assembly. So these irregularities now are being addressed at a large scale, at a large level, and because of that, Prime Minister has said that whatever Supreme Court has said, it's a big boost for Jammu and Kashmir, and particularly for its people.
Right, Vikas, and finally, what is the significance of setting up of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission as ordered by the Supreme Court?
Right, Shubhendu, Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul has said in his separate judgment, though he has given a concurrent opinion, but he said that we have seen issues related to human rights violation for particular situation in Jammu and Kashmir since 1947, and to address those grievances, to address those issues, we must have a reconciliation commission which should look into the complaints of people who had to face several cases of human rights violation by the state and non-state actors, as he said in his judgment, though he was very clear that it is just an opinion and it is not binding also on the government to form a commission. But he said that since he is a part of Jammu and Kashmir, he comes from that state, he has seen the pain, he has seen the cases of human rights violation by terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir Valley, and to address those particular issues, it would be better if we form a reconciliation commission who will address those issues, so we can prosper by moving ahead and addressing past grievances of people of Jammu and Kashmir, particularly people of Valley.
Vikas, thank you for joining us with those inputs. The Food, Agriculture and Water Day at COP28 witnessed significant developments as nations made major commitments to address climate impacts and also to assist countries in unlocking finance and support for farmers. The day featured major announcements, including the launch of a 2-year work partnership leading to COP30 by the UAE and Brazil. The COP28 UAE presidency, in collaboration with partners, introduced more than 30 new country members of the Freshwater Challenge. Additionally, COP28 presidency, Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, World Bank, Consortium of International Agricultural Research Centers and International Fund for Agricultural Development jointly announced Sharm el-Sheikh Support Program. COP28's Food, Agriculture and Water Day marked the conclusion of the presidency's 2-week thematic program. As the COP28 negotiations near their conclusion, Executive Secretary of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Stammen Stahl, has strongly condemned the use of tactical blockades and strategic landmines in the ongoing discussions. During his address at the COP28, he underscored the critical need for securing a meaningful agreement and outlined 2 pivotal concerns: the ambition levels in mitigating climate change and the commitment of nations to support the necessary transition. Stahl also underscored the importance of maintaining focus on the overall objective.
Areas where options need to be negotiated have narrowed significantly. We are now here to discuss two issues. One, how high is our ambition on mitigation? And two, are we willing to back this transition with the proper means of support to deliver it? Let me assure you, from our viewpoint at UN Climate Change, the highest levels of ambition are possible for both.
Time for a short break, but still to come on this edition of DT India Live. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi launches Viksit Bharat at 2047, a platform to engage the youths. UK Prime Minister Sunak appears before COVID inquiry panel, extends apology to families of victims. China and Philippines trade accusations over vessel collision in South China Sea.
Story of Dal Lake of Naya Kashmir.
मैं बड़ी होकर ऑफिसर बनने चाहती हूँ, दूसरी बात मैं पुलिस बननी चाहती हूँ।
बहुत काम आया, उसका टूरिस्ट आया, उसका काम बहुत जलता है।
यहाँ पे तो अभी बहुत कुछ बदला है। यहाँ का जो अभी गवर्नमेंट है, उन लोगों ने बहुत कुछ किया यहाँ पे। 2-3 सालों से यहाँ पे बहुत टूरिज्म आ रहा है।
Has the post Article 370 abrogation change, the impact of it also percolated when it comes to the local fishing community?
हर एक यहाँ पे ₹10 कमा रहा है।
यहाँ पर लोग आते हैं घूमने के लिए, फिर वो खरीदारी करते हैं शॉल्स, पेपर मशी, अखरोट लकड़ का, क्योंकि यहाँ भी लोग है ना, रोजी इनकी भी चलती है यहाँ से।
After 38 years, I have seen tremendous change in this place.
हमारा कश्मीर जो है सबसे खूबसूरत डल लेक, शांति है यहाँ पे।
Welcome back. You're watching DT India Live. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing a day-long hearing in London over his role in the Eat Out to Help Out scheme during the COVID-19 pandemic. Sunak is also expected to be asked about his terms with ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson. This comes ahead of Tuesday's vote in Parliament on his plan to revive a policy to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. Rishi Sunak, the then finance minister, is also accused of saying the government to let people die rather than impose a lockdown due to major impact on the economy. DT India correspondent Julia Chapman joins us live from London with more. Julia, what is the nature of this COVID inquiry? What are the accusations against Rishi Sunak?
Well, Rishi Sunak is not on trial here. The inquiry is aimed at getting to the bottom of how decisions were made at the top of government during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic and what lessons can be learned from that process to prevent such tragedies being repeated in the future. Of course, this was a very difficult time for everybody in the UK and for decision makers trying to balance all the various considerations at play, including people's lives, people's livelihoods, mental health, the education of children, among a number of other factors. Now, Rishi Sunak is giving evidence after his predecessor, Boris Johnson, gave evidence last week, and he was the ultimate decision maker while Rishi Sunak was his chancellor or finance minister. And Rishi Sunak has really emphasized the idea that he was responsible for putting forward economic evidence to the government. He wasn't ultimately making those decisions. He wasn't having to balance all the considerations, although he said he did give opinions on that when asked. But he has shied away from being overly critical of Boris Johnson, although privately there have been messages released as part of this inquiry suggesting that there was quite a lot of chaos and disorder in the cabinet at the time. Rishi Sunak denied that suggestion, saying that he thought things were run fine at the time and that there was robust debate going on because there's a lot of discussion about whether lockdowns were too long, taken too quickly once again after the first lockdown ended, and a lot of criticism is likely to come to light later in the day about a particular policy that Rishi Sunak was responsible for, the so-called Eat Out to Help Out scheme, whereby the government paid people to go out for dinner in restaurants to help boost the hospitality industry, something scientists have said led to a direct increase in the virus spreading.
And Julia, given how the pandemic wreaked havoc in the UK, across the world, what does Prime Minister Sunak's apology on the matter mean for the people?
Well, he did open his testimony by apologizing to those who lost loved ones during the pandemic and also to those who were affected in myriad other ways. The implications of the COVID pandemic are still being felt today with those who suffer from long COVID, children who had a huge gap in their education, among many others. So certainly Rishi Sunak wanted to emphasize at the beginning of his evidence that that had been considered, that the government did understand that and empathize with those affected. But ultimately, for those particularly who had family members lose their lives during that difficult time, this apology won't go far enough. There were protesters last week when Boris Johnson gave his evidence. They had to be removed from the hearing room. They were holding posters outside reading "The dead can't hear your apologies." So certainly there are very high emotions when it comes to this difficult period. But Rishi Sunak trying to emphasize that the government was taking decisions as much as possible based on the evidence they had in order to minimize harm all around.
Julia, thank you for joining us with those updates. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the Viksit Bharat at 2047 Voice of Youth via video conferencing today. Viksit Bharat 2047 is a platform for the youth of the country to actively engage and contribute in the journey towards a developed India. During the program, Prime Minister addressed the Vice-Chancellors of universities, heads of institutions and faculty members in workshops organized at Raj Bhavans across the country to mark the beginning of this initiative.
MyGov के अंदर विकसित भारत @2047 सेक्शन लॉन्च हुआ है। इसमें विकसित भारत के विजन के लिए आइडियाज का एक सेक्शन है और क्योंकि आइडिया की शुरुआत ही आई से होती है, इसलिए इसमें ऐसे आइडिया चाहिए जिसमें वर्णन हो कि मैं स्वयं भी क्या कर सकता हूं। और आइडिया में जैसे आई सबसे पहले है, इंडिया में भी आई सबसे पहले है। यानी अगर हमें सफलता पानी है, लक्ष्यों की प्राप्ति करनी है, उचित परिणाम लाना है, तो स्वयं के आई से ही शुरू होता है। ऑनलाइन आइडियाज के पोर्टल पर 5 अलग अलग थीम्स पर सुझाव दिए जा सकते हैं। सबसे बेहतरीन 10 सुझावों के लिए पुरस्कार की भी व्यवस्था की गई है। साथियों, जब मैं सुझावों की बात करता हूं तो आपके सामने खुला आसमान है। हमें देश में एक ऐसी अमृत पीढ़ी को तैयार करना है जो आने वाले वर्षों में देश की कर्णधार बनेगी, जो देश को नेतृत्व और दिशा देगी। हमें देश के एक ऐसी नौजवान पौध को तैयार करना है जो देश हित को सर्वोपरि रखते, जो अपने कर्तव्यों को सर्वोपरि रखें। हमें सिर्फ शिक्षा और कौशल तक ही सीमित नहीं रहना है। एक नागरिक के तौर पर 2400 घंटे देश के नागरिक कैसे सजग रहें, इस दिशा में भी प्रयास बढ़ाने आवश्यक है।
Mohan Yadav will be the new Chief Minister of Indian state of Madhya Pradesh. The decision was taken at BJP Legislative Party meeting in Bhopal today. Mohan Yadav is an MLA from Ujjain South constituency of the state. In recently concluded assembly polls, BJP had won a resounding 163 seats. Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan and other BJP leaders congratulated him after he was named as the leader of the BJP Legislative Party. India's semiconductor industry is witnessing significant growth, with reports indicating a massive surge in semiconductor jobs in the country. According to a report, American tech firm Micron is set to erect one of India's most extensive assembly, testing, marking and packaging facility at Sanand. Israel Star Semiconductor is likely to establish semicon fabrication plant in India. Tata Group to invest 200 crores in Indian rupees in semiconductor testing and packaging unit in Bengaluru. Tata Semiconductor Assembly and Test Private Limited is expected to generate 155 employment opportunities. American semicon company AMD will establish new design center campus in Bengaluru, creating some 3,000 engineering positions over the next 5 years. Another US firm, Lam Research, to initiate the training of 60,000 Indian engineers through the Semiverse solution for semiconductor education. Moving on, amid tensions with Beijing in the South China Sea, Philippines has summoned China's ambassador to Manila over the sea confrontations. The move comes as Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. accused China of aggressive actions against its vessels and personnel over weekend in the South China Sea. That's all for this edition of DD India Live. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. And we're also there on YouTube. We'll be back with more news as it breaks on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.